it's not just simplistic waving a flag and shouting slogans is not going to bring about an actual change. Shouting slogans.
What do we call it when the Prime Minister of Israel himself uses biblical motifs?
Genocide!
Shouting slogans.
What do we call it when the Foreign Secretary of Israel calls Palestinians animals?
Genocide!
Shouting slogans.
Not in my name! Not in my name! Not in my name!
Slogans.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Islamic podcast. Doing well. Now, as you guys can see, I had a operation done on my left middle finger. And I'm doing well now. In today's video, inshallah, I'll be reacting to Yasir Qadhi.
Are we not sick of going to war?
And this time, I want to show you guys how Yasir Qadhi have no idea about basic Islamic history and how he just misrepresent the importance of the Khilafah in Islam and Islamic history. The problem is that if you go down in his comment section, you see so many comments from both Muslims and non-Muslims who are just straight up mocking the concept of the Khilafah, the political system that the Sahaba built, the companions of the Prophet built, following the Prophet, following the legacy of the Prophet. And this is something that made me extremely angry. Let's see what they said, and I'll make my response, inshallah. And a lot of the references I'll be giving are actually from this book right here. This is Caliphate al-Muslimin of Abu Bakr Siddiq radhiyallahu anhu by Dr. Ali Salavi.
Which you let's say like the ideal Muslim scenario. So there's a group of Muslims who have the power and they will not be opposed by anyone to establish like the Caliphate, for example. And they have one Amir al-Mu'mineen, and the West is not going to get involved. They want to be hands off and let us basically do our own thing in our own country.
Good for them, alhamdulillah. Excellent.
Yeah. So in that case, no problem.
Alhamdulillah.
No issue. Okay, alhamdulillah. So
like these people don't even know what a Khilafah is. A random person in like some Muslim country cannot just declare themselves to be the Caliph. Like it doesn't work like that. Like if a bunch of like Muslims got together and decided, you know what, we're gonna have a Khilafah. That's not gonna be a Khilafah because there are conditions which makes a Khilafah. Let's first understand what a Khilafah actually is. So according to 9th century Iraqi scholar Imam Abul Hasan Marwadi, he describes the Khilafah as the following.
Imamate is prescribed to succeed prophethood as means of protecting the deen and of managing the affairs of this world. There is a consensus of opinion that the person who discharges the responsibilities of this position must take on the contract of Imamate of the Ummah.
This is what a Khilafah is. Basically, it's a Muslim ruler who is in charge of protecting the religion of Muslims and someone who manages the worldly affairs of Muslims. So a Khilafah or a Caliphate would be a system of government which works directly under a Caliph in order to protect the religion of Muslims and who manages the worldly affairs of Muslims. So one of the conditions of being a Caliph is that it has to be someone from the tribe of Quraysh or someone who belongs in that tribe. So it cannot just be some random person. For example, there's a hadith in Sahih Bukhari where it says the following. Narrated Ibn Umar, Allah's Messenger said, this matter caliphate will remain with the Quraysh even if only 2 of them were still existing. Narrated Muhammad bin Jabir bin Mutim, that while he was included in the delegation of the Quraysh staying with Muawiyah heard that Abdullah bin Amr had said that there would be a king from the Qatan tribe, whereupon he became very angry. He stood up and after glorifying and praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as he deserved, he said, to proceed, I have come to know that some of you men are narrating things which are neither in Allah's book nor has been mentioned by Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Such people are the ignorant among you. Beware of such vain desires that mislead those who have them. I have heard Allah's Messenger saying, this matter of the Caliphate will remain with the Quraysh and none will rebel against them, but Allah will throw him down on his face as long as they stick to the rules and regulation of the religion. You can remember this in Sahih Bukhari 7139. They're both wrong. They have no idea what they're talking about. Because if a random country decides that they're going to establish a Khalifa, it's not going to be a Caliphate. Okay, it's just going to be a random king. Now, I understand like Rami al-Khalil, like maybe he's just layman. He's probably ignorant on this matter. He doesn't know. But what's the excuse of Yasir Qadhi? Like, why doesn't he know? Like, he's supposed to be this big, like, giant intellectual scholar. And he doesn't know what he's talking about.
My question now is, let's take these two kind of positions, because right now there seems to be two mainstream positions. One is we need to work to fully implement that system, and whatever the reality is, we need to work to change the reality to make it acceptable to have such a system. Whereas the kind of train of thought that you're proposing, and please correct me if I'm wrong, seems to be, listen, that's not going to happen now. Let's just focus on doing what we can to make the situation better. And there are certain ahkam that can be interpreted to fit the modern context instead of working to change the modern context to fit Islam.
Yes, I would overall agree with you there. I don't oppose those who want to establish an alternative system, but I simply point out, don't blame me if I think you're being impractical. That's my opinion.
What the hell is this?
He's saying that,
oh, I don't oppose the concept of the Khilafah. I just don't think it's practical.
Imagine this, right? Imagine, and someone says that, I have nothing against women. I just don't like women. Like, it's such a self-contradictory statement. Like, what are you even saying? Like, the thing is that if you're not against something, then you wouldn't preach against it, but you are preaching against it. And because you're preaching against it, this proves that you are against this concept. Let me put a simple modus ponens form of argument, right? If Yasir Qadhi supports the Caliphate, he wouldn't speak against it. Yasir Qadhi does speak against it, therefore he's against the Caliphate. Like, it's that simple. It's a very simple argument. Like, you can logically prove that he is against the Caliphate. It doesn't matter if he thinks that he supports the Caliphate. He doesn't. Like, his actions say otherwise.
I see.
Prove me wrong. I wish you all the best.
Yeah.
But the global system is here. People have tried. The Taliban tried in the 90s. ISIS tried. Al-Qaeda tried. You're going to go down that route? I don't know what to tell you. You're going to go down that route? Arab Spring, the whole Middle East tried.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Look what happened.
The Arab Spring had nothing to do with the Caliphate. Like, what is he talking about? Also, I love how he's like, oh, if you want a Khilafah, you're like ISIS. Prove me wrong. You're like ISIS. Like, he's literally calling people who's asking for a Khilafah ISIS. Like, are you serious right now?
This is not okay. This needs to stop now.
But then he's talking about the Al-Qaeda, ISIS and whatnot. First of all, why are these people the example how to establish a Khilafah? Like, did Abu Bakr radhiyallahu anhu, did Umar radhiyallahu anhu, did they vanish from Islamic history? So basically, he's cherry-picking history. Instead of cherry-picking an incident where Muslims were successful in establishing Khilafah, he's cherry-picking history where Muslims did not succeed in establishing Khilafah. And by cherry-picking these examples, he's saying that, oh, look, because these people fail, you will fail too, right? But it doesn't logically follow because he's not showing the full picture, because in the past, Muslims did succeed in establishing Khilafah. Basically, he's committing the cherry-picking fallacy. And the cherry-picking fallacy is basically when you cherry-pick data to fit your narrative and come to a conclusion that doesn't logically follow.
How exactly are you going to do that
without
revolution and blood? And with that revolution and blood, what does that entail? That entails the governments that you're fighting against, they will kill you, your family, your friends, millions of people because they're worried about the kursi. Look at Syria. Look at Egypt. Look at all of these countries. You want to do it all over again? My heart is with the people who stood up for the Arab Spring. That's what my heart is, right? But I saw the realities of what happened.
The results of it.
I saw the results of it. Do you understand what I mean here?
Absolutely.
My heart and my du'as were with the people on the streets.
Yeah.
I jumped for joy when the Arab Spring happened. But the bitter reality and the bitter pills that we saw.
If you try to establish a Khilafah, it's going to be like Syria, it's going to be like Iraq. But did you notice that none of these examples were actually trying to establish a Khilafah? People, during the Arab Spring, right? People simply wanted to remove a dictatorship. They didn't have this collective goal of trying to establish a Khilafah. And that was not even in people's mind. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why this movement didn't succeed. Because it didn't have a cohesion or a proper planning from the whole ummah, which is what is needed if we want to establish a Khilafah, right? Where all the Muslims are working together. Because these countries were isolated and a lot of the Muslims, they sadly didn't get the support that needed, they failed. But the thing is that if the Muslim ummah was united and they wanted a caliphate, I don't think it would be that easy for them to fail, because they would have help from other places. Now, I want to make something very clear. I am against rebellion or any kind of legitimate form of any kind of like rebellion or rebelling against the ruler is obviously not allowed. Islam doesn't allow that. And also against doing protest if the Muslim government doesn't allow you to protest. However, if you're living in a secular country and the secular country, so-called secular country, does allow you to protest, does allow you to get involved in election, and you have a Muslim party that is trying to establish a Muslim government for, in order to establish a Caliphate in the future perhaps, or at least help in that cause, then there's nothing wrong with that. And if in that process they die, then that's a noble death. Then they're martyrs. So then why is he acting as like somehow this is such an evil, bad thing? Why is it fear-mongering? Shouldn't you be preaching for martyrdom? Because martyrdom is a good thing. I'm sure that he knows about all the hadith where the Prophet talked about the martyrs who die fighting for trying to establish Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's deen. Right? They're the most honorable people there is. So if people do try to establish a khilafah or a Islamic law in their land, and they're killed for that, that's the greatest death you can ever get. So like, what's wrong with that? And this is the problem. Like, this guy is a coward. He is a coward. That's why he's against the Khilafah. That's why he's against Muslims trying to establish a Khilafah. This reminds me of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where he basically said, at the end of times, the enemies of Muslims will surround them from all sides and like basically they'll gather around us like people gather around a dinner table. And one of the companions asked, will the Muslims be small in number? And the Prophet said, no, they will be large in number, but they'll be weak like foams in sea. And he said that, and the reason Muslims will be like that is because of our love for the dunya. Right? That's what will make us weak. And this is exactly what Yasir Qadhi is demonstrating. He's demonstrating how he loves the dunya so much that he's afraid of losing his life. Right? He's afraid of these rulers more than he's afraid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When in reality, he should be advising Muslims to not be afraid of these rulers instead of being afraid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like, what will we say to him if we don't put any effort into establishing the Khilafah? If we don't put in any effort to establish Islamic law? Completely defeatist mentality. This has nothing to do with Islam. This is completely contrary to Islam, but regardless.
So the first question, Shaykh al-Karim, is what is your personal view, based on your understanding of the Quran, the Sunnah, the Seerah, of the obligation of establishing the Khilafah? Is it something that is fard? And if so, the level of fard? And where do we get this fard from? Is it something that is aqdi? Is it something from the Sharia? Is it something aqli? So what is the role of the Khilafah in our discourse as Muslims?
We're talking about a particular point, which is the obligation of having a singular global political leadership for the entire Muslim community, or a centralized government for the entire Muslim community, as some people imagine that we can have.
2,000 years later.
Now, is it a must to have a singular global leadership for Muslims? I think that it is a fard to work towards unity and to actualize of that unity, whatever it is that can be actualized, given the socio-political realities of the different times.
I mean, he asked him a very simple question, which is that, do you think it's fard to like establish a khilafah based on like one imam? And he's like,
you have to think about global Muslim unity, and we need to do what we can to establish that unity.
Like, that's not the question. The question was, is it fard to establish caliphate where there's only one imam? Okay, yes, it's fard. And we know this is fard because, for example, there's a hadith in Sahih Muslim and Sahih Bukhari where basically a woman came to the Prophet for a legal judgment, and then the Prophet told her to come back later. Then before she went away, she asked the Prophet, what if I cannot find you? Indicating that what if he dies? And the Prophet said, well, then go to Abu Bakr. So here this hadith indicates the Prophet saw Abu Bakr as his successor. And please note, he didn't say that, go to Omar, go to all these other kind of like companions. No, he said Abu Bakr. So this indicates that when it comes to kind of legal rulings, there should be one person that you should go to. Where basically this hadith is narrated by Hudayfa, where he said that we were sitting with the Prophet and he said, I don't know how long I'll be among you, but after my death, you'll be following these two. After that, he pointed to Abu Bakr and Omar. Now this hadith is interesting for a number of reasons. First of all, there can be two ways of interpreting this hadith. One is that this indicating that after the Prophet died, there will be two rulers, which is Abu Bakr and Omar. Now obviously we know that didn't happen, so obviously what he meant is that after him, Abu Bakr would be a ruler, then after his death, Omar would be his ruler. That is the obvious conclusion, which means that he's indicating there can only be one ruler for the Muslims at one time. And there's no evidence that Prophet ever indicated that there can be multiple rulers for Muslims, at multiple caliphs for Muslims. There's simply no evidence of this. For example, Imam Shastrani, he said in his book Al-Milal wa Nihal by Shastrani, volume 7, page 83, where he basically said the following.
Imam Sarastani said, in the hearts of Abu Bakr and others, the idea that Muslims can live without a Khilafah didn't even register. All Sahaba agreed that the world cannot be without a Khilafah. They had an ijma on this.
So there's never been a case where the companions even thought of the idea that Muslims can take care of their affairs without a Khalifa. It didn't even occur to them. And the best evidence for this is the consensus of the companions. After the Prophet died, the scholars, the companions of the Prophet, they had a consensus that there can only be one ruler, and that ruler has to be Abu Bakr radhiyallahu anhu, right? That's what they chose. So this is proven by consensus. So yes, it is fard. It is fard because one, there's a consensus. There is countless evidence from the Prophet ﷺ himself that he indicated that there be one ruler for Muslims. There are hadiths where the Prophet basically said, you cannot have more than 2 imams. And if you give your allegiance to one imam, then if another comes, then you should kill them. And both of these things prove clearly that there can only be one ruler for the Muslim ummah.
Quotations that are well known in our tradition, and I will quote very quickly, but it needs to be quoted because these are quotations always found in these discourses online. So, for example, the Nawawi says, وَأَجْمَعُوا عَلَى أَنَّهُ يَجِبُ عَلَى الْمُسْلِمِينَ نَصْبُ خَلِيفَةٍ وَوُجُوبُهُ بِالشَّرْعِ لَا بِالْعَقْلِ, that there's ijma', that the Muslims have to elect or put up a leader. And of course, Qurtubi says in his tafsir, وَلَا خِلَافَ فِي وُجُوبِ ذَلِكَ بَيْنَ الْأُمَّةِ وَلَا بَيْنَ الْأَئِمَّةِ إِلَّا مَا رُوِيَ عَنِ الْأَصَمِ وَهُوَ عَنِ الشَّرِيعَةِ الْأَصَمِ, that there is no difference of opinion given in the entire ummah except for the Mu'tazili al-Asam, and then he made a pun because al-Asam means the one that is deaf, and so he said he was deaf or mute from the Sharia. So there is no khilaf, that there must be an imam and a khilafah that is established. And Ibn Taymiyyah, as you're aware, there's so many quotations. So one could say your sentiment at the beginning 5 minutes ago seems to clash with all of these quotations. What would you respond to this?
It doesn't. It may appear so, but it does not. I said in the beginning that we have to separate between imamate or imama, as in order versus anarchy, versus having one imam for the entire ummah. These are two different discussions. So Imam Juwayni rahimahullah in his book Al-Irshad points out that difference, that one is min al-qawata and one is not min al-qawata. One is a certainty, which is the importance of installing an imam or appointing an imam, basically to defend the weak, to protect the borders, to establish law and order. There is no question about this whatsoever. This is min al-qawata. Now, plurality of imams, multiplicity of imams versus singularity, that is a different discussion. Realistically speaking, we have one imam for a very short period of time, and thereafter we have not been all under one imam for the vast majority of our history.
One thing you'll notice about this liberal reformers, which is that they'll use a lot of kind of like Arabic terms to make them sound smart. When this kind of like youth, they're watching them, they're like,
oh my God, he's saying Yuwaka and all this kind of Arabic terminology. This must mean they're correct, right?
Except they're spouting bullshit. This is completely false. He's saying that there can only be imam because of chaos.
I'm an agent of chaos.
Which is an absurd concept. This idea that there can, because he repeats it a lot. This idea that there can only be an imam when there's like some kind of chaos or fitna. This is false. How do you know it's false? Because Abu Bakr radhiyallahu anhu himself explained why he became a caliph and his reasoning behind it. So in Al-Mustadrak, volume 3, page 66, there's a hadith that is graded Sahih by Imam Hakim and Imam Dahabi, where basically they quote Abu Bakr radhiyallahu anhu as giving a lecture, khutbah, for the people after he became the caliph. So he says, for Allah's sake, I never wanted to become a caliph. I never had an interest in this. I never prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this. However, I was scared, if I don't accept this, then the ummah will fall into terrible fitna. Even though I was not at peace after accepting the Khalifa, I still picked up this important role on my shoulders. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala don't give me the ability to carry it, then I cannot carry it. I wished for someone else who's stronger to carry this. Now, please note what Abu Bakr said in this. He said, and I quote, however, I was scared, if I don't accept this, then the ummah will fall into a terrible fitna. That's the reason why he became a caliph, because he was worried that if he doesn't become a caliph, the ummah will fall into chaos. So it's not the case that because the ummah was in chaos, that Abu Bakr had to become a caliph. That's not the case. What happened is that Abu Bakr feared that there would be chaos if he doesn't become a caliph. So that's why he became a caliph. So the caliph comes first, and the concept of fitna comes second. Okay? The caliph has to exist to avoid fitna. It's not the case that if there is fitna, then there can be a caliph. That is completely false. So Abu Bakr like literally debunks him. And And this is hilarious because he constantly make this point, which is that, if there's chaos, only then there can be a Khilafah, which is false. It's straight up false. And now I don't know whether he's lying or he's just making a mistake, because this is not true.
But Sheikh, okay, let me take...
So now we take the Sunnah. Now we take the Sunnah. إذا بويع لخليفتين فاقتلوا الآخر منهما. من بايع إماما فأعطاه صفقة يده وثمرة قلبه فليطعه ما استطاع فإذا جاء آخر ينازعه فاضربوا عنق الآخر. So إذا بويع لخليفتين فاقتلوا الآخر منهما. If the bay'ah is given to two khalifas, kill the latter. Whoever gives the pledge of allegiance to an imam, then he should obey him as much as he can. And if another one comes to dispute him or to overthrow him, then kill the other. Kill the other. Okay. Now here's the issue. Is the Prophet ﷺ talking to Muslims? This is just like the global moon sighting and the local moon sighting. Is he talking to Muslims in different localities that you should not have more than one imam within the same dominion or the same territory? That's a possible interpretation. That is a accepted authenticity of those reports, and we accept them. Isn't it a possible interpretation that the Prophet ﷺ was talking to different Muslim communities in different places, saying that you must not have two imams at the same time within the same dominion, within the same territory? It's a possible interpretation. So there's no certainty here that the Prophet ﷺ is saying, and then the ijma is reported. The ijma is reported. But didn't the Ansar say, minna amir wa minkum amir? When the Ansar convened at Saqifat Bani Sa'ida, or the Shed of Bani Sa'ida, or the portico of Bani Sa'ida, whatever you call it, did they not say, we'll appoint an amir from our side? They said to the Muhajirin.
He's talking about the Ansar, the Ansar said something, you can have a ruler or whatever. He quotes this hadith. First of all, the Ansar accepted the rulership of Abu Bakr radhiyallahu anhu. It was established by consensus. So what point do you think you're making? Also, he's committing the faulty comparison fallacy. I mean, he's talking about, he's quoting this hadith, the hadith where if you give pledge of allegiance to this one ruler, another comes, you should kill him. But how do you know that when he's talking about leader, he's actually talking about local leaders? What if he's talking about local leaders? He's trying to act as if somehow local leaders and global leaders is the same thing. It's not. You cannot give bay'ah to a local leader. No one at the time of the Prophet after him were going around giving bay'ah to some governor. That's not how it worked. Bay'ah is something that's only reserved for the caliph.
Point that we have to emphasize here, because I have been open enough to talking to people who are not like me. People that may be described as secular Muslims, for instance. I have been willing to talk to them, to hear their concerns and their trepidations and their reluctance about the concept of Khilafah, their fear from this concept. They're basically paranoia about this concept, because they have traumatized memories, particularly the people who were under the Khilafah, the people who are a little bit more on the intellectual side, and they do read the history and they are a little bit more familiar. So whatever it is, and I have considered myself always to be one of the people who want for Islam to have its rightful place in the public space or the public sphere. Whatever we present to them, it brings about bad memories, nightmares for them, because many of our Khulafa were bloodthirsty lunatics, many of them. And I have never shied away from saying this, and I will never stop, that many of them were bloodthirsty lunatics. And they used the Ummah as a fodder for basically their pursuit of power and their pursuit of consolidation of power and their pursuit of tyrannical power and their pursuit of basically acting as the Khalifa of Allah, as basically divine agents on earth, or this is how they thought of themselves.
This leads...
Oh no, guys, this is their trump card. This is the ultimate trump card. Those poor secular Muslims, they're so scared of the Khilafah, that if you talk about the Khilafah, it traumatizes them, it hurts them. It hurts those poor secular Muslims. If the Muslim world unite, there's going to be this evil monster called the Khilafah. He's going to come and he's going to eat them, and take away the children. These people are so cringe and so weak and such so pathetic. When everything is said failed, at the end of the day, this is the argument that he brings. Oh, what about the secular Muslims? Oh no, we don't want to upset the secular Muslims. It's the secular Muslims who are destroying everything that we Muslims hold dear, right? I mean, subhanallah, man. Who gives a flying F about the secular Muslims? I don't care. Is it obligatory for us to have establish the Caliphate? The answer is yes. That's it. Should the Muslims have one ruler who's obeying based on the Quran, Sunnah, and the way of the Salaf? The answer is yes. Did the companions chose Abu Bakr radhiyallahu as one ruler? The answer is yes. Did the Prophet ﷺ told us to follow one ruler and told us that if someone else challenges him, we need to kill him? Yes. This is fard. This is obligatory. There's no going around this. This is well established. even then, like, you can simply point out to them that, look, you're committing a logical fallacy known as history generalization. You're generalizing people. Yes, some Muslim rulers are bad. That doesn't mean all Muslim rulers in the past Islamic history were bad. Look at the good ones and try to replicate that. You know, it's not that hard. So, and the funny thing is that whenever I listen to this kind of like liberal reformers, I get so depressed. Like, these people are so, like, you know, so depressing to listen to. They're constantly, they're talking like Islamophobes. They're constantly belittling Islamic history. They're constantly belittling the concept of the Khilafah. They're constantly insulting the memory of the Sahaba. Like, how can you say these things about the Khilafah when we had rulers like, you know, the companions of the prophets? Like, how can you not bring up their example, just be proud? And instead, he's trying to bring down the legacy of Muslims. He's trying to say, oh, you cannot have this Khilafah, they're so evil, bloodthirsty monsters. Look at the languages he used. These are the kind of languages an Islamophobe would use to describe Muslim rulers. This is not what a Muslim would use to describe their own rulers. I would never use this term to describe the companions of the Prophet. Like, how dare you? Who gave you this right to insult them like this? Or like insult this incredible concept that we have. We worship one God and we obey one ruler. It's a beautiful concept. It's just so depressing to listen to. I don't know why any Muslim youth would listen to these people. And it's constantly, he couldn't bring one example or one evidence where it says that, you know, you can have multiple imams for the whole Muslim Ummah. There's no evidence for this. So yeah, with this I'm done. Thank you guys for watching. Sorry, it's probably going to be a long video, but I haven't posted anything in a while, so I hope you guys can be patient. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoy this, and I'll see you guys next time, inshallah. I'll try to do a lot of live streams. If you guys like the video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. And if you want to support me, you can support me by becoming a Patreon or by becoming a YouTube member. Inshallah, I'll see you guys next time, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.